Greetings viewers. Welcome to the new world. We are anonymous. We wanted to share something with you, and we know how you love movies, so here we go. People wake up from different things. An event that makes you finally see that something is not right. A document or discovery you make, perhaps by accident, which tosses you into a world you can't believe is real. Many are awake, but even those who are still desperately asleep in many ways. As we worry, what sparked the curiosity, which led to this project, was that the elite families of the world claimed to be from King David and Cain. However, they refused to reveal their genealogy. This all started, for us, as a challenge to simply find the genealogy of the rulers of today's elite bloodlines, in their entirety. They have hidden it very well. Now we know why, and it was more disturbing than we could have imagined. We exposed it to you in a small amount here. The history and path of this elite family is kept very, very hidden. Not only have translations of documents been changed, but most original historical documents and archaeological discoveries are taken over by the elite and locked down and sealed. They change their names and terms so often. It is dizzying. This can make it difficult to see what is going on and follow a heavily intertwined bloodline, hiding them exactly as it is intended. We hope this will help you begin to see the web of deception a bit clearer. It takes time indeed and study to literally put the fibers of their genealogical DNA together. Needless to say, it involves countless hours and months, and for most people, years of exhaustive research to find the real truth on any one topic, let alone link them all together to uncover the web. Calendars, days, months and times have been changed through history as the elite have come into power, and lining them back up again is tedious to say the least. Religion, education and science have all been created and corrupted by these elite, which can be followed back. The deception and censorship is in every area of our lives today. We are all kept in one track of sight and never able to step back from our stress and work and see the bigger picture of what we are contributing to. We have all been lied to. We have all been deceived. But thanks to the internet we have the ability to find out whatever we wish to know. If we are wise and able to use discernment, we can still find the truth. Barely. There is much more detail in our writing, The Bloodlines, which can be read for free and distributed as you wish at sayanarchy.com. The link is in the description. We have done our best to keep this video understandable and of a reasonable length, to help you have the basic understanding of what everyone should know. We hope this small peek into reality will thrust you into the pages of our discoveries, and that you then further explore the truth for yourself. We have read thousands of original historical writings, from papyrus and stone. We have translated from and into dozens of ancient languages to be certain the information was the truth. We have exposed concealed and confidential documents. We have written our findings in an easy-to-read document for everyone. No one should be alive in our day of information and not know the truth of our world. You must understand the depth of your deception. The power of the elite today is all-consuming, and we have only this moment, this time in history, to repair the world for good. We have the power as we wake up and see the truth around us. We must wake now, before it is too late. Let's look at the world we are in today. For those who may still not be aware of the Federal Reserve, FEMA, the collapse of the dollar and martial law in America, then we urge you to look into it. Much will be covered here, but it is assumed you have a general idea of how that is all in play right now in America and many other countries. Very briefly, let us look into the issue at hand, so we are all on the same page in that respect. The problems created under the control of the elite affect us all.
At a 1991 closed-door meeting of fellow internationalists, billionaire and former CFR chairman David Rockefeller praised his media allies, but his confidence that his words would not leave the room was later broken.
We are grateful to the Washington Post and the New York Times, Time Magazine, and other publications whose directors have attended our meetings and restricted their promises of discretion for almost 40 years. It would have been impossible for us to develop our plan for the world if we had been subject to the bright lights of publicity. But the world is now more sophisticated and prepared to march toward a world government.
Redirecting the bright lights of publicity is not the media's only contribution towards such a plan.
We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order to fulfill the promise and vision of the UN's founders.
But using the slogan, they got through the USA Patriot Act, which removes many of our liberties. Nobody made a sound when we lost habeas corpus, due process of law. Where was a voice on television, aside from mine, that spoke out against this? Where are all those noble jurists, those great lawyers, those lovers of liberty? Where the hell were they? They were nowhere. Now we have a totalitarian government. And the totalitarian government wants to watch everybody, total surveillance of everyone. They listen to the telephone conversations. They look at your credit cards. They look where you travel. We are totally policed. This is contrary to everything in our Constitution.
We've been reporting about this all along. Police are arming themselves to fight against your average American citizen, conservatives, patriots, and definitely returning military. Why aren't people seeing this? Well, perhaps because their local news stations are massaging it into their brain that this is completely normal.
According to the Pennsylvania State Supreme Court, police officers no longer need warrants to search a person's vehicle. The Pennsylvania Supreme Court ruled 4-2 that police officers can search a vehicle without a warrant.
According to the New York Times, top secret NSA documents indicate that the spy agency's global facial recognition technology has seen huge growth in the last 4 years.
Common Core Standard is a new curriculum implemented in schools across the nation. The goal of Common Core is to put students on a level playing field and help prepare them for a global economy. However, many teachers and students say it creates a factory-like environment that stifles individual learning and puts pressure on educators to only teach to the test.
The New World Order wants to create a world currency, a world government, a world army, a world religion. And it's not of Christ, of Buddha, it's not of the Muslim faith, it is a satanic order. The New World Order is housed right here at the United Nations. It is global government.
Since the Industrial Revolution, we will see a fascinating sequence of events unfolding. First, the ever-increasing concentration of cash and other resources in a few private hands, such as banks and gigantic multinational corporations. Corporations whose revenues are equivalent to the GDPs of entire countries, and whose mere survival demands more and more profits year after year, no matter the social cost. Second, the creation of public, multilateral control organizations that are actually nothing but the public arm of powerful private interests. These organizations include the American Federal Reserve, the World Bank, and the IMF. Third, the undeniable advance of the process known as privatization. That is, taking non-renewable natural resources, communication infrastructures, heavy industries, as well as defense, health, and banking systems out of the hands of the people and delivering them into the clutches of profit-hungry private corporations.
We work many different ways, economic hitmen, but perhaps the most common is that we will identify a third world country that has resources our corporations covet, like oil, and then arrange a huge loan to that country from the World Bank or one of its sister organizations. But the money never actually goes to the country. Instead, it goes to our own corporations to build big infrastructure projects in that country, things like power plants and industrial parks and highways that benefit a few wealthy families in that country, as well as our own corporations, but don't help the majority of the people. I think it's fair to say that this process is a huge threat to democracy, and if the majority of the people who vote in the country don't understand this most basic principle of our foreign policy, then we're not informed. And if we're not informed, it's hard to say that we're voting.
Well, it looks like President Obama just handed over your local police to the United Nations control. Robert Romano for Life Zit reports that the, quote, Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice has provided oversight and recommendations for improvement of police services in a number of cities with consent decrees. Okay, they say this is one of the most effective ways to reduce discrimination in law enforcement, and it needs to be beefed up and increased to cover as many as 18,000 local law enforcement jurisdictions.
Members of the G20 countries are meeting in China this week with an express goal of fighting anti-globalism sentiments. You see, the global elites are rewriting the rules of the economy to help usher in a new world order that, as Zbigniew Brzezinski says, will now include Russia and China. This new globalist order is something for which they have no remorse because of their disloyalty to any one nation, or even to humanity as a whole. What's more is, they've shown their willingness to trash the dollar to attain that end. These purveyors of division are more than willing to obfuscate secret trade agreements in documents longer than Barack Obama's initial 2,700-page Affordable Care Act, which has, as a side note, dramatically hiked premiums for Americans who were already hard-pressed for cash and proved itself an utter failure in the realm of affordability. Although we are meant to believe that China and Russia are trying to financially undermine the US for their own gain, at the Dollar Vigilante, we know their true intentions. The elite's goal is to break up Western hegemony and redistribute power back to major countries in the East in order to further destabilize the world financial structure. Many who follow the actions of the elites know that they operate on an occult timeline. Just ask Christine Lagarde, the managing director of the IMF, who gave an eerie numerology speech about the magic number 7. It's not happenstance that the addition of the Chinese yuan to the SDR basket in early October coincides with the end of a biblical cycle called the Jubilee.
The White House has ordered the death of Donald Trump, President Erdogan of Turkey, President Putin of Russia, and Prime Minister Medvedev, all on the same day. And all 4 attempts have failed. The world has had it with the evil little trolls obeying their masters in London, destroying the planet. So what we're seeing, the EU, what we are seeing is the dissolving of the Euro nation state, as witnessed by the Brexit vote. Before the European Union began, back in the 90s, yes, I'm old, I was briefed that most of Europe would form a union, but England would never really be part of it. They would remain part of the North American Union. The EU would rise and then fall apart as their dollar fell in value. Then would come the collapse of the dollar 2 weeks later and the worldwide depression, pitting Christians against Muslims, leading the world into a worldwide destruction and then bringing about the worshipping of Lucifer, their god. This is all planned by the Rothschilds and the Catholic leadership in Rome and the Unholy Alliance, the bankers in Jerusalem, Rome, Frankfurt, Paris, and London. And if you didn't know, all telephone calls and all internet connections go through Israel. There are 2 companies that monitor everything done worldwide. And in 385 AD, the Pope was declared emperor of all of the Roman Empire, and the chasm between the East and the West began. Now here in the northern city of St. Petersburg, you see the Roman chariots, because a long time ago, the Roman Empire from Rome destroyed Constantinople, and the Holy Roman Empire was moved from Constantinople to Moscow and then to St. Petersburg, Russia. So the Roman Empire, the actual Holy Roman Empire, exists in all of Russia. It's the Eastern Empire, the Eastern Church. And there is the Roman symbol on top of the Hermitage. Right about here is the original Madonna painting with 10 stars. The European Union has 12 stars. It is the fake, false, and felonious, thank you, Dave. It is the fake unification of Europe, which now must fall apart. The real unification of Europe, according to the Madonna, has 10 nations, not 12. Coup. This is a little more complicated. That's why we had these stories. It's a little more complicated. This is NATO. It's supposed to be only 10 nations. The United States and Canada are not supposed to be part of NATO according to the Madonna. So the Turkish coup is a little more complicated. President of Turkey holds a loose coalition of many different religions together under one, quote, world religion called Mohammedanism, or Islam. The United States has fostered rebellion across the Middle East. They know the sun is getting hotter. People are getting agitated. And he plans to break off the eastern half of Turkey into a new nation called Kurdistan. Well, the Turkish people don't want to have two nations. And he wants to move Constantinople into Bulgaria and make Turkey this little puppet nation of NATO. And as a NATO nation, which gives them certain monetary considerations, they know that they have to teach this stuff. Well, Erdogan knew that a CIA coup was coming. So he fostered his own coup and is now in the process of purging the satanic influence that has been fostered into his nation. So Erdogan knew he was going to get taken out by the CIA. So he sent his own troops out there with corks in their barrels, not to hurt anybody, and on his way to Constantinople to squash the little rebellion that the United States Embassy in Ankara had planned and funded. 2 U.S. jet fighters locked missiles onto his presidential aircraft. And then Russia locked about 500 missiles onto those U.S. aircraft and called Incirlik Air Force Base and said, if you don't call off your little doggy-woggies, we're going to destroy everyone at Incirlik Air Force Base. Now, so the U.S. backed off. And Erdogan went in with his troops and he arrested those 2 fighter pilots that shot down an Su-24 from Russia and then locked in on the Turkish president. They work for the CIA and they're in deep doo-doo. Erdogan is now firing all professors, teachers, judges, anybody who had anything to do with Satan, he's purging. But it was not Erdogan that was the prize. He saw the coup occurring in Constantinople, or Istanbul, and then he created his own little military fake coup, and then was flying to Constantinople and wanted to kill Erdogan and have an uprising in Constantinople and give it over to Bulgaria. But after they killed Erdogan, they were planning on killing Putin and Medvedev. Now, this didn't come together till I looked at the timing when I warned Medvedev and Putin to keep their heads down. So after they killed and shot down Erdogan, they were going to kill Putin and Medvedev. Putin was on the way back from the Vella monastery out of St. Petersburg, Russia.
Now that we know what is going on today, at least a little more. Of course, there is much more going on around the world, but we will be detailing what is necessary for this topic. So who are these bankers and elite who design and control our lives? They have all been exposed to you before by many, but perhaps we can adjust the lens so you can see it more clearly. The elite who control the rulers of the world today are all connected by blood as well as belief. They hide behind many things. They have been hiding behind the term Jew for most of history. They are not of the tribe of Judah, which is why real Jews oppose them. They are not Judean, Judah nor Jews. The star called the Star of David is the Star of David's son Solomon. David and his tribe used the symbol of the menorah. Solomon was a Luciferian, from the elite bloodline, which is not passed down from the male side but the female side of the gene pool. Solomon was married to one of the elite bloodline and belief. The star is a symbol of Lucifer. The new terms for Luciferian today are Jesuit and Zionist. Always remember they use different names, different terms. They are always in a state of change. It is all the same thing. That is what they are. One only need look at their symbols. They can be identified by the jewelry they wear today, the symbol of their status. This is not a joke. This is proven fact, and has been for centuries. Give unto Caesar's that which is Caesar's. Who is Caesar? He who stamps his symbols on everything he uses to control us. Many do not understand what it actually means, the depth of the seriousness of this group's beliefs. Their belief is what they live by, what they are sworn to act on. The plan they follow is scripted to them because of their belief. So we must learn more. You watching this now, we are not discussing your beliefs here. We are discussing the elite who control us believe, for a brief moment. So please relax and keep an open mind. We must know our masters. So let us dive right in. Be aware. The elite have been blinding us all for a very long time. They do everything they can to keep you from the truth. What is this oath they live by?
Noted historical figures expose deplorable Jesuit secrets. The recent election of Cardinal Jorge Bergoglio to the position of Pope Francis I was an unprecedented event the world has never before witnessed. It is the first time in history that a member of a Jesuit order has been elected to the highest position of the Roman Catholic Church. Reactions worldwide varied from jubilation, to matter-of-fact acceptance, to disinterest. These very reactions revealed appalling ignorance of the true nature of the Jesuit order. Widely regarded as a benevolent missionary order, known for its educational institutions, the Jesuit order, as the Society of Jesus is commonly known, has long played an incredibly influential, albeit secretive, role in the destinies of nations, organizations, and individuals. Rulers, presidents, scholars and even Catholics themselves who are aware of the evil perpetrated by this powerful, far-reaching order, have left on record grave warnings that all should heed. Nor will it contribute a little to our advantage, if, with caution and secrecy, we foment and heighten the animosities that arise among princes and great men, even to such a degree that they may weaken each other. But if there appear any likelihood of reconciliation, then as soon as possible let us endeavor to be the mediators, lest others prevent us. Finally, let all with such artfulness gain the ascendant over princes, noblemen, and the magistrates of every place, that they may be ready at our beck, even to sacrifice their nearest relations and most intimate friends, when we say it is for our interest and advantage. Let proper methods be used to get knowledge of the animosities that arise among great men, that we may have a finger in reconciling their differences, for by this means we shall gradually become acquainted with their friends and secret affairs, and of necessity engage one of the parties in our interests. Immediately upon the death of any person of post, let them take timely care to get some friend of our society preferred in his room, but this must be cloaked with such cunning and management as to avoid giving the least suspicion of our intending to usurp the prince's authority. Muccio Vigileschi 1562-1645, 6th Superior General of the Society of Jesus. Quote, when sovereigns require a Jesuit's opinion on any subject, the Jesuit in question is to report the matter to his superior, who is to lay it before several Jesuits for discussion. The resolution formed after this consultation is supplied to the Jesuit who has been consulted by the sovereign.
I now, in the presence of Almighty God and you, my ghostly Father, the Superior General of the Society of Jesus, founded by St. Ignatius Loyola, do by the womb of the Virgin, and the matrix of God, and the rod of Jesus Christ, declare and swear that His Holiness the Pope is Christ Regent, and is the true and only head of the Catholic or Universal Church throughout the earth. Therefore, to the utmost of my power, I shall and will defend this doctrine and His Holiness right and custom against all usurpers of the heretical or Protestant authority, and all adherents in regards that they be usurped and heretical, opposing the Sacred Mother Church of Rome. I do further promise and declare that notwithstanding I am dispensed with to assume any religion heretical for the propagating of the Mother Church's interest, I do further promise and declare that I will have no opinion or will of my own, or any mental reservation whatsoever, even as a corpse, but will unhesitatingly obey each and every command that I may receive from my superiors in the militia of the Pope and of Jesus Christ. I furthermore promise and declare that I will wage relentless war, secretly or openly, against all heretics, Protestants, and liberals, to extirpate and exterminate them from the face of the whole earth, and that I will hang, burn, waste, boil, and flay, and strangle and bury alive these infamous heretics, rip up the stomachs of the wombs of their women, and crush their infant heads against the walls, in order to annihilate forever their execrable race.
Let's discuss for a moment. How does this become so large without us all knowing about it? That is much easier to see if we simply take a step back and look at a general example. We will be going into greater details on this as we continue, but put yourself in the following situation. As an example, America contains 29 Jesuit universities and 60 Jesuit high schools that are known today. This can be seen in every country under Jesuit control. Not only are schools and universities under their control, but hospitals and many other facilities and organizations and corporations. They own the media, medicine, and more. Citizens are told by the controlled media and others that these places are the top schools, the best of the best. Why do you think that is? Seriously. Apply that concept to everything. So we are all cattle. The Jesuits founded all of these places throughout your country over time, with a plan to use them as mind control on you. Mind control is often thought of as MK Ultra. What people never seem to see is that they had already applied that concept to everything. They had been doing mass mind control on populations for generations, censoring what you learn, what you read, what you see, what you become. From the beginning, MK Ultra never ended, just like the rest of the projects we have been able to learn about. Thanks to the internet and our ability to get access to knowledge that was not accessible before, we can now identify them as the banker Jesuit elite we know fairly well today. But the rabbit hole is much wider than that. They have infected every aspect of our lives. What food we eat, the air we breathe, the diseases we get, the medication, all of it. We will be touching on all of these subjects in this movie. Now let us just look at the university as an example to see how it works in practice. How do people get involved? How do they let themselves get under this control? Put yourself in the situation. You work very hard in school and get very good grades. You perhaps get a scholarship and are accepted to a top university. A dream come true. The chance of a lifetime, where everyone wishes they could go. You were chosen. So you go off to this great new start to change the world. You are instantly greeted by a group of newfound friends. You are accepted. So you try hard to fit in and are eager to please. You bring the beer to the parties. They laugh at your jokes. One day, they tell you to come to a secret meeting or to join them later, alone. You know this is it. You knew there was something about them. Something they did. You are excited they finally want to share it with you. They want you to be part of their group. Perhaps you do not even know what the group really is, but you know these people have the nice cars, the hottest dates, the most money. They have power. They are nice to you and you want what they have. You are chosen because they know what you covet. They have watched you. They have selected you. Most are too naive to see the deception at this level, since we see it in daily life from the time we are born. Your neighbor growing up did not like the boy across the street, so he was shunned or bullied or simply shut out of being a friend. In high school, the cool kids picked on and bullied those who were perhaps not able to dress in new clothes or struggled in class. We learn that we have to fit the correct mold in order to be in a certain place in life. There is always a ladder to climb in the societies controlled by the Jesuits. This is what government and religion is based on. This is indoctrination, control, mentally, socially. Everything is manipulated and controlled by them. A chain of command, a popular and unpopular, a division. However, those who do get selected have a choice at this moment to never go further but to run away from the trap of lust. A popular secret society would be the Freemasons. To continue with the timeline of how this works in someone's life, we will continue with this example. So your friends lead you to their other group of friends, the Masons. You hear good things about them, because you are controlled. You see the mainstream news, the mainstream internet searches. You believe the story you are told. Why would it be different? For the more serious clubs, like Freemason, everyone, I mean every person who does not already know what Freemasons are when they go into it, will not learn until it is too late to leave. There are always choices we can make, but rarely do people research deep enough to find the truth about what they involve themselves in. We are kept blinded from birth. We are told these people are what we should aim to be. They are rich. They have a good life. They would never be involved in something bad, unless they are a top-level member of those societies. They have no idea of the reality of what they are involved in. Not only are we all told and controlled by a lie, an illusion, from the beginning of our lives, but this illusion hinders most of us from even looking for the truth. So you join the Freemasons with your friends, you instantly get noticed from more people. You are contacted by the top professors and possible employers. You have a new car and money is not a problem to come by anymore, thanks to your new friends. Now, say you want to be a top athlete, or musician, or lawyer, or doctor. Not just any doctor or athlete. A top-level Olympian. Respected. Famous. Successful. You want fame and fortune. It is easy to put yourself in their shoes at this point. You rise in the group that promises you all these things. Your dedication is rewarded as you climb the ladder of what you call success. The ever-faithful servant. One day you are chosen. They want to initiate you into the 33rd degree. The top levels are finally achievable. The good life is almost here. This would be another time for you to make a choice to run from them. But you are brainwashed. You have been kept blind until this point. You continue up the ladder of control. You are focused. You work to be promoted. You are driven. You are consumed. A classic American, I mean slave. This initiation is where reality hits full force. Blackmail. Now you have been doing many things in your newfound prosperity. With your new friends, things you would probably not have done or have been able to do without their money in the group you are in. They know all of it. They have proof of all of it. They show you videos, emails, phone calls, recordings, photos, and more. What they show you would ruin your reputation and your life permanently. How could they do this to you? They are your friends. They reassure you it is only to be sure you will keep your mouth shut. You swear the oath and a vow of silence about the group, and they will keep you safe and successful. You feel you have no choice. You take the oath. only to find out it was only the beginning. They perform a humiliation ritual on you which typically involves sexual acts and a live burial for a period of time, until you are reborn into the family. Now you must pay your dues. They must ensure you will never tell, like a ton of bricks at this point. You now know you will never able get out of this and live. They confirm it. You must make a blood sacrifice. Yes, a human sacrifice. Child rape, torture and murder, ritual murder of family members and friends. Did you think this was child's play?
What you're hearing is the first recording ever made of the Skull and Bones initiation ceremony. It has never been broadcast before.
This is how you become a star. You must pay to play. Want more fame or fortune? Or if they feel your loyalty may be fading, you will have to pay more. Sell your soul for fortune and fame. We will get into the rituals in more detail as we continue. However, you can see the level of saturation they have, and hopefully you can see how this is so huge that the deception is hard to see. The rabbit hole is very wide indeed. We shall discover how deep it is as we go on. Big things always start small. This is the reality of the elite who rule us. This scene can be seen in every group that the Jesuit elite have ever created. Same mind control, same pyramid scheme. They are all created and controlled by the Jesuit elite, so it matters little which term you use. The top circles. They control us all. For the elite bloodline, the top Jesuits in control today. A common practice is to have a so-called important child secretly or quietly without fanfare. This child is only important only to the public. The poster child, the face of change. They breed the chosen child from the bloodline. The child then is adopted out at birth. To hide the identity, it takes on another last name, which hides the genealogy. Its life is completely scripted and controlled, and they are brought up in the societies including Freemason, and they serve their purpose in the ruling elite's plan. This is explained in greater detail in our document. You must keep in mind that the puppet rulers are controlled from the start. We all are, if only on a different scale. By the time they realize what they are involved in, it is too late. It is their blood. Though many never wake up, they are consumed. Those who do wake up are killed. We saw this with the infamous JFK and Lincoln. Since we have a general idea of what we are dealing with here, who are these elite Jesuit puppets and masters today? Let's explore just a few of them quickly.
I want to show you a few things here. I want to show you that in our last video, we talked about these frauds here, all being Masons. This guy with his secret hidden hand sign. This guy's a Mason. This guy's a Mason. They're all Freemasons. But what most people don't know is that the forerunner, Donald Trump, is actually a Rockefeller plant. Back in 2012, Donald Trump held a briefing with Richard Haass, head of the Council on Foreign Relations. Here you see an article here. Donald Trump, who again declined on Thursday morning to say whom he talks to about foreign affairs, held a private briefing last summer with Richard N. Haass, the president of the Council on Foreign Relations. A spokeswoman for Mr. Haass said Thursday.
Wanting to take you inside of the $100 million penthouse on the 66th floor of Trump Tower. This is exposing sun worship in the occult. You can see the Masonic pillars. This theme is copied all across this place. It is mirrored in the floor and in the ceiling, literally. As above, so below. And all of this is set off by some interesting detail that I want to share with you. Now in the background, back here on the right, you have a family portrait. They say the siblings, and then a picture of his father, this book worth $15,000, that is sitting here, pillow with his coat of arms. But then we get to the other pictures, and the statues, and the vases. And what it symbolizes is exactly what Trump believes in. You see, on the wall here, the centerpiece is Apollo, the sun god, the son of Zeus, centered between the pillars, dead center, showing his loyalty, showing what he believes is important. Now, Zeus had a son named Apollo and a twin sister named Artemis, and Apollo was the god of the sun. It is Apollo. It is laced with sun worship and Apollo. Is it all starting to make sense to you now?
What difference at this point does it make?
Hillary, the Hillary that I knew back here in Arkansas, when she was in the Benghazi hearings, when she said, "What difference does it make? They're dead."
What difference at this point does it make?
That's the Hillary I know.
We came, we saw, he died.
I finally parted company with Hillary Clinton when I saw how she was using private detectives to investigate the women who were linked to her husband. Not to change him, not to reform him, not to make him a better person, but to cow the women into silence so that he could get elected president. I do not want that woman controlling the IRS or the DEA or the NSA or the FBI or the CIA. Not in a democracy.
I'll tell you a couple of stories about fraud.
I know about once a month Hillary would go out to Los Angeles. And she did it so regular that it became a bit of an issue trying to, why is she always going? Bill told me that she was going out there, she and a group of women, and she would be a part of a witches' church. And man, when Bill told me that, you could have hit me with a baseball bat. I tried to point out to him, you realize what had happened if that got out? Of course, my job was to make sure it didn't get out.
All the secret emails, criminal acts, cover-ups, and that sexual relationship with Huma Abedin that is whispered about in the dark corners of Washington. Besides the secretive relationship Clinton has with Anthony Weiner's wife and closet Muslim Brotherhood member Huma Abedin, there is a litany of pornographic peccadillos and criminal acts. Diplomatic security agents sexually attacked female guards. Clinton security agents routinely solicited prostitutes, and embassy staff were caught running a drug ring in Iraq. But the most disgusting aspect of Clinton's corrupt State Department was Ambassador to Belgium Howard Gutman, who routinely ditched his security detail in Brussels and solicited prostitutes, including minors. The Inspector General investigating Gutman charged him with pedophilia, sex with children. But all of this was swept under the rug by the corruptocrat Hillary Clinton. But Clinton, ostensibly out of government, is still pulling the levers of power. The State Department's former chief investigator, Richard Higbee, now turned whistleblower who uncovered much of Hillary Clinton's perfidy, is now suing Slick Willie's better half, and he's paying the price.
their website, the Prince Hall Masons, that is the black Freemasons. You see, there's always been a separation of the whites and the blacks. And here on their own website, they campaign for Barack Obama. If we get a list, and I show you here a partial list of famous Prince Hall Freemasons, we find many black names on it. There is, of course, Sugar Ray Robinson, the famous boxing champion, but there's also Julian Bond, the national chairman of the NAACP, Thomas Bradley, mayor of Los Angeles. There's the black revolutionary during the 60s, Eldridge Cleaver, and it goes on and on. Reverend Jesse Jackson is a member of the Harmony Lodge in Chicago, Illinois, no less. There's Kwesi Mfumi of Baltimore, Maryland Lodge. There's Congressman Charles Rangel of New York of the Joppa Lodge, number 55. And Reverend Al Sharpton, New York City civil rights leader, also a Mason. According to the book 10,000 Famous Freemasons, Mayer Amschel Rothschild, the first baron of the Rothschild clan, was a Mason. All Rothschilds are Masons. That's according to John Quincy Adams, one of the most brilliant presidents in American history, 6th president of the United States. In his book, Letters on Freemasonry, he exposed the Masonic sect. He said that it is a tool of Lucifer. And he said more. John Quincy Adams warned that Masonry ought forever to be abolished. It is wrong. It is a seed of evil, said the president, which can never produce any good. Ariel Sharon, called the Butcher of Lebanon, was a Freemason. Bill Clinton of Monica Lewinsky fame was a Freemason. Fidel Castro, who tortured so many and put so many innocent people into jail cells in Cuba, a Freemason. I might add, Prime Minister Netanyahu of Israel, yes, a Mason. Barack Obama, a Mason.
The irony of it all is that Russia, once dominated by Jewish Bolshevism, is now under the revered and popular leadership of Vladimir Putin, a Christian nation. But America, a once Christian country, is now under the all-pervasive influence of what I call the Jewification of America. Obama is surrounded by Zionist Jews who have leadership positions in every sphere of his administration, while Putin has gained world renown for his purge of the Jewish oligarchs, known as the robber barons, who took control of the Yeltsin administration in 1996 and looted all of Russia's wealth, from oil to aluminum and everything in between, not to mention they're taking control of all of Russia's mass media.
Исламским радикалам и готовы пойти на то, чтобы сделать себе обрезание, то я вас приглашаю в Москву. У нас многоконфессиональная страна, у нас есть специалисты по этому вопросу. Порекомендую ему сделать эту операцию таким образом, чтобы у вас уже больше ничего не выросло.
he told the military that these priests were subversives, and this amounted to a conviction, very dangerous in that time. And at the same time, he told them that he was helping them and protecting them.
Could he have been taking the explanation he's given, which is, I did what I could behind the scenes, but I couldn't be outspoken because of the position in the country at the time?
Well, other bishops did the opposite and were outspoken, and at least 5 of them pronounced in that time very clearly, not him, not him, not him.
Essentially, during the military government, 1976 to 1983, Bergoglio was provincial of Argentina's Society of Jesus. In other words, he was the top Jesuit official in the country and wielded tremendous power. And when the dictatorship was installed in 76, he, as well as the Catholic clergy in general, the Catholic hierarchy, was firmly behind the junta, and that junta was involved in mass killings and assassinations. So that now the position of the Catholic Church and the involvement of Jorge Mario Bergoglio, not only did they support the junta, but they actually collaborated with the junta, and that is very clear in even in statements made by General Jorge Videla. Not only did the military commit these atrocities, but they also consulted the Catholic hierarchy as to how they should proceed, and they said I quote textually that we kept the Catholic hierarchy informed about the disappearing of political opponents. Okay, they were involved in the policy of arresting people, disappearing them, dropping them from aircrafts, and so on. And Jorge Videla said, this was an interview which was published recently in a Spanish magazine. He said, we had many conversations with senior members of the church, including at that time Cardinal Raúl Francisco Primatesta, about how the dirty war should be conducted. And they actually said, yes, we arrested members of the clergy, we tortured them, we disappeared them, but we always consulted with the Catholic hierarchy.
And they literally created a new religion. And by way of demonstrating that, it's interesting to note that the new Mass that is celebrated in most of what are called Catholic churches today is called the Novus Ordo Missae, the New Order Mass.
As an exorcist who's been doing this for a long time, do you see similarities between what the current Pope or Franken-Pope is doing and what you see in symbology or acting out in the demonic realm?
I will say this, that Francis is promoting the same agenda that the progressives are, the same agenda that the globalists are. And the globalists and the progressives have a foundational philosophy rooted in occultism.
Most of the Jews in Israel today, the Talmud Satan worshippers over there, are not real Jews. And people ask me, well, who's a Jew? Who are the real Jews? And you know what? It's so that doesn't even matter today, because the bloodline thing of Israel was demolished.
Wicked and evil force on earth, one that will persecute Christians and bring death and bloodshed to the whole world, is the synagogue of Satan.
One of the things I want to bring up here is also their preoccupation with murdering large numbers of non-Jews, or as they refer to us as goyim cattle. They take great pride and great pleasure in the destruction and murder of large numbers.
Many of the greatest rabbis of the Talmud, including Simeon ben Yochai, upheld this privilege. Today in Israel, thousands of Jews go to Meron every year to venerate the memory of Simeon ben Yochai.
In one of dozens of endorsements of child sex, Simeon ben Yochai said, "A proselyte under the age of 3 years and a day is permitted to marry a priest." Agreeing with ben Yochai, the great Rabbah said, "When a grown-up man has intercourse with a little girl, it is nothing, or when the girl is less than this, 3 years and a day, it is as if one put the finger into the eye." The footnote to this passage says, "As tears come to the eye again and again, so does virginity come back to the little girl under 3 years." The same section confirms that sexual activity with small boys is in the same category. The intercourse of a small boy is not regarded as a sexual act.
Done to us. I knew I had a big problem, and I had no idea what it was called. I called all over the country. I had children's drawings for the police. My husband was under arrest for sodomy and oral sex with my children. And I had all kinds of drawings that had circles and people with, there was black candles always in the middle of these tables, and all this oral and anal sex pictures. And I went to the Catholic Church and I said, "I don't know what this is, but it seems to me these drawings are significant. There are all kinds of symbols I don't understand, and devil heads and goat's heads," and I had no idea I did not know what satanic ritual abuse was. Church asked me if I ever had a psychiatric exam, and I said, "Actually, I'm completely sane. I just know that there's symbols in these pictures." No one would help me, even though there was a prosecution going on. They said, "If you ever bring up satanic ritual abuse, your credibility is lost and you'll just be a kook, and it doesn't exist and it's not organized in America. Just focus on child sexual abuse." So I took my children to a child sexual abuse hospital. And while they were being treated, and I had legal custody of my children, and my husband and his lawyers and the judge found out my children were in an expert hospital, they confiscated my house, everything I've ever owned, from my baby pictures to my clothes. I walked away with literally the clothes we had on our backs. Took my cars, my federal post office box mail, my income, my assets. I lost everything by taking my children to an expert on child abuse.
Let's talk about the McMartin case. In April 1985, authorities went to the McMartin case and looked for tunnels under the school. The children had said that they were taken into tunnels under the school. There was a chamber down there. They were sexually molested. That involved ceremonies, adults with robes, candles, chanting. Adults had no clothes on under their robes. And they were taken up into a tunnel and a triplex, a bathroom trap door of the triplex next door. They were taken out in automobiles. We're talking about 2, 3, 4-year-old children, folks, and prostituted in the community. Finally, in 1985, went out and decided to look for the tunnels because they said the children were hallucinating. The children also said that they were taken by air up into a mountainous area where they were exposed to satanic ceremonies based on what they described, and brought back in time for the parents to pick up the kids. So the authorities didn't find anything. We're getting off. Pull those next slides. Well, I'll tell you what. In the spring of 1993, I heard that the property of the McMartin School had been sold from the McMartin family to the defense attorney, actually given to him. He didn't make enough off the county. His bill was only $3 million. And from there, he said he was broke and he sold it to a contractor. The contractor was going to build an office building on the space. And I heard that the contractor had this property. And so I went out and contacted him. And I said, dear sir, I would like to have access to that property. He said, I'll give you 2 weeks. I signed a contract, assumed liability, and along with some of the parents, we hired an archaeologist from UCLA, Dr. Gary Stickle, knowing full well that I'm not qualified to say there's tunnels under there, even if I found them. And we began our dig. At the end of 2 weeks, I had to stall, because Dr. Stickle was not quite ready to admit there were tunnels. It took us 34 days. At noon, the 34th day, with the bulldozers, with their motors running, ready to knock the building down. He was going to knock the building down and then build this office building. Dr. Stickle said, you know, I can say without any question right now, there have been tunnels under the school. They were filled in. Now, I'm going to show you the documentation on the tunnels.
European royals are killing naked children for fun at human hunting parties. See, there's elitists, and then there's the people that work for the elitists, and it's all just so sick. I can't figure out who's worse. The people, rock stars coming out and saying, I've been to some of these snuff parties, where elite people go and pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to watch children be sacrificed, to watch people be murdered. Remember this? This is by Child Abuse Recovery, Judy Byington, I believe that's how you pronounce it. This is one of a series of articles taken from eyewitness testimony before the International Common Law Court of Justice in Brussels. 5 international judges are examining evidence of child rape, torture, murder, and kidnapping allegedly done by global elite members of the Ninth Circle Satanic Child Sacrifice Cult Network.
It's hard to smear a 13-year-old girl and a host of other teenagers that were part of a harem of underage sex slaves. Jeffrey Epstein was indicted and imprisoned for keeping dozens of underage girls on his Caribbean island estate to satisfy his sick sexual appetite. And Bill Clinton was no stranger to Epstein, frequently flying to his private island on one of Epstein's many private jets. Plastered on the walls of Epstein's island mansion, according to a lawsuit and information provided by teenage sex slave Virginia Roberts, were lewd photos of underage girls. According to Virginia Roberts, Bill Clinton, sitting at the table with 2 other underage sex slaves, didn't seem to mind the arrangement of Epstein's sexual proclivities, or the child porn plastered on the walls, or the frequent orgies at Epstein's estate. Virginia Roberts was one of at least 20 underage girls, one as young as 13, that were part of Epstein's pedophile ring that serviced politicians and British royalty. Most of the girls have been paid off with Epstein's billions to keep their mouths shut. Some say specifically to keep quiet about Bill Clinton's exploits at the Caribbean island pedophile.
These corrupt people we point out in our current society live by a script. They play by the numbers. Every action they do is given to them by their controllers, and they play both sides. The controlling elite Zionist Jesuits command the Vatican under Luciferian law. Yes, the elite are a bunch of damned Satanists. They have to do human sacrifice rituals and child sex rituals to have and increase their status in the elite. I don't like it any more than you do, trust me, but this is truth. It is not usually pleasant. They control the media. Some have been found out and exposed, but the rest of them lie waiting for us to rip them out of the dark. We have to understand, the puppets, as evil as they are, can change. If they have any humanity left in them, anyone can change to the side of goodness and truth. We must do our best to help them. When they come forward, we must support them and stand with them. They must know that there is hope for those who stand up for what is right, even if they have never done so before. Though they live by oath and under Luciferian laws, they can be freed. They just don't think they can. They are deceived. If they have the courage. We were never promised that life would be easy. Hope, freedom, love, are all very difficult. But we must have all of these to be humanity. So we now know a bit more about the elites of today and what they believe and do. Let's look into the plan for the New World Order they are calling global government and international community today. It has 3 parts to it. It is the same 3 parts they have always tried to bring into practice through history. You can see the exact schemes, the exact chess moves repeated by them time and time again, in every facet of life. The first part, one government is already in place, as we saw earlier, thanks to the 10 kingdoms under the UN, which is controlled and owned by the Vatican. We are all under the ownership of the Jesuit Vatican. The only thing to do now is tear down all the countries and kingdoms we fooled masses think we live in today, to get us all on board. The next part, which is happening now, one currency. This is the reason why the dollar is being dissolved. The planned destruction called the migrant crisis we see today with the Middle East and Africa is due to a war planned well before the 70s. Just another crusade to destabilize countries, depopulate, destroy history again so they can once again rewrite it. They have always destroyed historical sites and hospitals and schools. For centuries. For thousands of years. This is what they have done. The same elite Jesuit bloodline. All of the divisions they force on us and corral us into, they use against us. They create divisions of every kind, one every level. Then, they will put forth the idea of change. Whatever the change is, it will ensure more safety, or more peace, or more wealth. Whatever you need to hear to follow the wolf in sheep's clothing. They create a problem, then they give you the solution. So they do now with the collapse of the dollar. World police, world government called community, and coming up next, one religion.
Just look at US national debt. It has doubled since 2008, and we're now living in a world with negative interest rates. The system is in its final stages. Yet your average American is more preoccupied about who should be allowed to use which bathroom than about the disintegration of the dollar economy. And this collapse couldn't come at a worse time for your average American. Usually in recent history, busts have come after a boom, meaning that people could, to some extent, manage through the bust. Not this time. Your average American's solvency has been decimated in the last 7 years. According to a recently released Pew report, 1/3 of all Americans don't make enough money to even cover the basic necessities. Even by the Federal Reserve's own numbers, Americans have been in a depression, earning less and less, since 2000. Americans are broke. According to Federal Reserve official William Dudley, America is no longer the top country for achieving the American dream, which is fast becoming a nightmare. At the Association for Neighborhood and Housing Development, he said recently, while income mobility in the United States has been relatively unchanged, it remains well below several other nations. The probability of moving from the bottom quintile to the top quintile is 7.5% in the US, as compared to 11.7% in Denmark and 13.5% in Canada. Socialists may point to Denmark and Canada and say, see, extortion rackets work. But they don't realize that many countries, including Canada and Denmark, have inched more towards free market capitalism in the last decade, while the US has rapidly moved more towards a fascist communist police state. In 1970, 61% of Americans could be called middle class. Today, it's just 43%. There is really no way to describe the darkness surrounding these initiatives. They are a perfect expression of Jubilee 2016. In fact, much as the 2030 Agenda is an extension of the UN Agenda 21, so Jubilee 2016 is an extension of Shemitah and Shemitah trends. In our video Super Shemitah, Elites Jubilee Your Plan to Crash World Economy by October 2016, I fully predicted the laying of further groundwork for the New World Order. And since we've seen further movement toward World War III, the ongoing destabilization of the Middle East, one of the worst starts ever to equities at the beginning of the year, a further move to a cashless society, and most recently the unprecedented hack of the Panama Papers that has led to a global tax crackdown run by the IMF and G20. Each and every word of describing these 2030 Agenda initiatives is based on a lie. Together, they create a kind of spiritual black hole that will swallow up tortured millions and then billions of lives. If those standing behind these documents have their way, each of us will be mutilated by vaccines, poisoned by genetically modified foods, banned from partaking of the bounty of the sea, taxed, surveilled, controlled, and spiritually dehumanized into beastliness.
Pike seems to indicate a conspiracy to start a war so that the Antichrist can ascend to his position as world ruler. Pike's letter ironically also detailed the specifics of the first two wars with stunning accuracy, suggesting that he knew before time the details surrounding each of the wars. The Third World War will be what allows the Novus Ordo Seclorum to rise out of the dust. According to Pike, Islam will be the central factor in the downfall of the West. Islam will be decimated in the process, allowing for the new religion of pure Luciferianism to spread on the earth. All Muslims will fall for this system. There isn't a single Muslim on earth who will not partake in the religion of the New World Order, according to Pike. Islam is merely a tool to destroy the Christian West. That's it. That's all it is. It's a tool. That's what they said hundreds of years ago. The esoteric cabal is using Islam to achieve the great work. It's all been mapped out. We've seen what they're doing with the migrant crisis. We've seen what they've done in England with the Sharia courts, and on and on and on. They're using Islam to stir the pot. The system has to come down. It has to topple. Islam will be used for the ultimate goal, and that is to fully usher in the Luciferian capstone. They're going to keep using it to destroy Western Christianity, Western culture. It's going to happen.
Because of time restraints, we will not be able to cover much history of the elite as we are focused on exposing them and what they are doing today in this movie. The original name for this elite group, and the one they used to call themselves in secret today, is the Synagogue of Satan, changed to Synagogue of Zion, changed to scribes, Pharisees, Sadducees, and so on. Long before they were called Jesuits, they were called Magi. Jesuit means magi or magic, which is the study of the satanic occult, called Kabbalah today. It is alchemy, astrology, mysticism, occult. To be a true Jesuit or magi, you must be in the bloodline, just like their relatives the Spartans. They keep the blood pure. Further, the candidate must be deemed worthy, usually dependent on their financial status combined with occult power. They study astrology and use many symbols in all that they do. Signs and symbols rule the world. It is a code. The star is probably the most popular one. The Star of Solomon, which represents Saturn, Apollo, Baal, Nimrod, Osiris, the god of the sun who is El or Satan. The hexagram and the pentagram are both Luciferian symbols with different and extensive meanings. As all symbols, if you want to be awake, then you better know the meanings of the symbols they brainwash us with subliminally and blatantly. So, the Magi, short for Majusidia, who were sorcerers, magicians, astrologers from Persia and long before 4 BC. In that time, they were called kings. It is just another term for priest. They are magicians, masters of deception. They always rename, because they know it confuses those who are not vigilant. Arose by any other name, we must be awake. The power structure or government they use calls for 2 leaders. In the Vatican today we see a black and white pope. When they ruled ancient Egypt there was a priest and a king. Before that, when they were still in the woods of Germany and called the Pannonians after their god Pan, who is Lucifer, they used a Kagan and Beck. Then they moved to Rome and created the general and a chaplain, military and religion, the puppet military force and master of the mind. We hope you can see which is the more powerful, and stop feeding the trolls. Helicasar once warned, the audience will always look where the magician looks. The magician must never look at what he wants to conceal. The audience will treat as important what the magician treats as important, and as unimportant what the magician treats as unimportant. One Egyptian high priest, Cartier, led a crusade to purify Zoroastrianism. This is what the elite called their religion at that time. Cartier led a crusade to do what crusades do: depopulate, force populations into a certain government or religion. No different than the crusade going on today. He carved the Zoroastrian teachings on rock faces of mountains, which can still be seen in Iran and throughout the Middle East today. The Zoroastrians believed fire was sacred, and Cartier limited the use of fire by the real Jews, including flames used in lamps. They tried to dominate education among the Jews and destroyed synagogues. Are you starting to see how nothing changes? The elite are not Jews. Persia was invaded. The Zoroastrian priests decided they needed a new religion again. They chose a devout Roman Catholic named Muhammad to study and become a disciple of the Kabbalah. The elite erased the name they went by from his copies of their documents, and created Muhammad as the new Zoroaster. Jesuit. Poster child. As usual, it is all exposed in their own writings. The Quran details it entirely. Do not be upset. They did the same thing with every religion. They used Ignatius Loyola as the new face of Jesuits to do the name change. Once again, what do you expect? Religion is an indoctrination, a brain control program, and we have no one to blame but ourselves. At this time in Egypt, the Jesuit priests, called Zoroastrians at this time, decided to change their god Nimrod to Horus and Osiris, whose eye we see at the top of their pyramid. Sun worship dominated Egypt just as it dominated every empire in history. Lucifer is the god of the sun, the angel of light. They change names often. They change terms often. Claimed to be able to transfer the sun god Osiris into a circular wafer. In the ritual, the followers ate the wafer they believed to now be turned into the flesh of their sun god Lucifer. The letters is on the sun-shaped wafer stand for Isis, Horus, Set. Moving on with the poster children. Joseph Smith was the face of Mormonism, and it was started, like Scientology, in exactly the same way as Muhammad. Joseph Smith was drugged by the CIA, then they read passages of the Bible to him and made him write down what he heard, and the masses mindlessly devour all propaganda the elite throw at them. Billy Graham, Rush Limbaugh, Jerry Falwell, and all the other mega men across the world, they are false prophets. They tell lies and steal your money to give to the elite. We see today our poster children for truth and freedom: Edward Snowden and Julian Assange, both well-known CIA agents funded and related to the Rothschilds. They are both used to honeypot real whistleblowers and steal your money by creating funds and foundations and telling you they are to support someone who they are exploiting. Because they came forward with truth. This is how it has always worked. Divide and conquer. They create whatever they need to continue creating division in us all. They herd us into groups and keep us brainwashed and blind. They feed us propaganda that we believe without even thinking because of their mind control. The truth is not comfortable, but this is all fact, and much more we have written out and exposed to you. There is far more on all religions in our document. Most of their deceptions are created in the same way. A pawn is used as the face of truth or change, a puppet. When the task is done, the elite sacrifice them or make them a prophet or saint, or award winner. Star. The elite play both sides. Always. So how can we know who is a real truth speaker and fighter for humanity? For starters, we must be diligent. We must watch. And we must act when they step out of line. Like a viper in the sand. We wait for them to step too close, and strike them when they do. We are the ones to keep them in line. The power is ours. They must tell us their plans before they do them. According to the oath, a deeper oath than those we have discussed thus far. Their patterns can be seen through history, and the tribe they are is exposed with much more in our writing, so we will continue now with what is happening today. The Knights of Malta are seen today, known as the Sovereign Military Order of Malta. It represents itself as a charitable organization and works with the UN since 1994, providing hospitals and help to the poor, hungry and with natural disasters. Other branches are called FEMA and Red Cross. They continue pushing the world on the depopulation agenda. What better way than when you are in total control of the health, the food, the medicines. The elite love the sick and poor because they are closer to death, which is exactly what they want you to do. Die. That is why Red Cross spreads diseases in their vaccines to experiment on and kill off millions of people every year in the name of charity. They are deceivers. FEMA is in charge of the death camps that have been used for over 100 years in America. This should not have to be explained to you or anyone. The amount of exposing videos and documents on these topics is overwhelming. There is no excuse for ignorance. Still, you think the one world order is not in place. You want to complain and act shocked and amazed when the elite play their games. This is not shocking. This is nothing new. And there is much, much more. We know the elite perform ritual sacrifices, false flags and other types of destruction to keep everyone in a state of fear. Why is there this constant flooding of fear porn? Because the elite are very dark and negative people. Everything they do is to create tension and fear, a stressed frequency. They feed off of fear and negative energy. So let us discuss some depopulation tactics they are using today and how they affect us. CERN and HARP technologies around the world are being used daily to change the frequencies in the atmosphere and Earth. These frequencies heat up the atmosphere, and that's how they created the global warming hoax. To again create fear. Research scalar physics and how CERN and HARP will be and are used to control chemtrails which are in your air, food and water. So it is in you. Not to mention the toxic substances in chemtrails. We implore you to look into these things more so you know the full truth. They control frequencies, and because everyone has a different tolerance, the results are devastating. They only show you death and destruction that they have created to make you fear, to mess up your body's frequencies. Everything is made of frequency. They have even changed the tuning of music, adjusted it a few hertz ages ago, just enough so we do not notice. The effect is slow. Another infection. Another frog slowly boiling. We do not notice until the frequency is no longer there, and our minds and bodies are allowed to normalize. Everything they do is so we cannot have peace. They create diseases and medications and foods to kill us all slowly.
With the Los Angeles Times on April 21st, you said that you told the Associated Press that the American government has created weather tampering techniques so that the New World Order will be able to starve millions of Americans and to control the rest. Would you explain what you were trying to say?
Well, what I was trying to say is exactly what I said. There is weather control techniques. We have a complete package on that, which I did not bring, but I certainly will see to it that it is brought in for the record. Number one, the entire patents on the equipment. Number two, Senator Claiborne Pell's complete statement and story of his own that not only does it exist, but that we even utilize it as far back as the Vietnam War. You might want to touch base with Senator Pell.
I just want to repeat before I turn to...
So yes, but we do have all that information.
You're saying the government has created weather tampering techniques so that the, quote, New World Order will be able to starve millions of Americans...
Worldwide.
Millions of Americans, and to control the rest.
Yes, sir, and that's my belief. As bizarre as that sounds, if somebody had told me that that equipment even existed 10 years ago, I would have thought they were nuts, sir. And at this point in time, we have all the documents to prove it. And if you think that 85 tornadoes takes place in the middle of our growing area by simultaneous accident, I'm sorry. With the equipment that's already set up internationally, and as bizarre as that is, it is proven and documented. We will supply you with those documents. As bizarre as that is, I would say that weather wars, and this is quoting actually Senator Claiborne Pell himself, that they are the greatest weapon ever created in the world, and that's the Senator's own statement. So yes, I do stand on that.
Thank you.
Contrails, those would tend to warm the atmosphere. Everything that we know about would.
So this particle. It's you can see if you look into the military domain, they use it for radar range enhancement, for turning the sky into optical lenses and optical mirror setup. You call it horizontal drift plasma antennas and columnar focal lenses, so that they can play with electromagnetic signals and radar signals by turning the entire air, the particulate plasma they bring out, into a controllable technical unit to direct and redirect all sorts of signals. This is part of the rocket field in the military domain. If you want to destroy a Russian rocket approaching London, you just calculate the path, and then you activate the plasma and heat up the plasma to 10,000 degrees. And then the rocket is melting in the air and exploding. This is the rocket field we have. And this needs to be sprayed out over the entire territory of Europe to have it everywhere. So this is the military domain, but as you see, some of the aspects of this particulate plasma are connected to diseases and to attempts to get access to the nervous system of humans. So this is the second agenda that appears on the monitor, which is not about military technology, but already about controlling the civil population of countries by accessing their nervous system to introduce signals. The second one, aluminum and manganese oxide. By the way, barium strontium titanate is produced in industrial spray pyrolysis at 750 to 600 degree flame temperature, which is identical with the flame temperature within normal jet engines. Aluminum oxide is also produced by spray pyrolysis by temperatures of 1700 degrees. This is afterburner technology. And afterburner technology in the military domain is utilizing aluminum fuel. So the aluminum is already contained inside the fuel. If you look at those particles, this is how they look like under the microscope. And the particle form is called a whisker. It looks like a star, and it has this special ability to attract electrons and to hold them. So this is the function of these particulate plasma in the military domain. The barium strontium titanate can be activated to spit out electrons, and the aluminum oxide is carrying them for a long time. Just to show that this is what we have on daily basis in the environmental monitor, both those two nanocrystals. This is also connected to a medical problem, especially if it is the low temperature form. Then you don't use aluminum, you use manganese, create manganese oxide. This is causing symptoms that are 100% identical with the influenza virus. And especially during the winter month, you find lots of this in the air, when all the people run to the doctor because they think they're getting a flu and they want to be vaccinated. I know in Germany they sold 20 million vaccine units last year. And the funny thing is, if you ask them, how do you know that people have a flu, it's only going via the symptoms. We had 6 people examined on molecular level to find out what kind of flu virus caused the disease. 6 people in this entire season in Germany, and from there they make statistics. So basically this is sprayed hysteria, and it has nothing to do with the virus, and running to the doctors to get vaccinated is suicide. Okay. The next thing that you can find in environmental monitoring are more gallons. If you look at the things the vaccination is containing, starting with mercury, this is pure poison. Starting with chelates that pull out copper from your body. you start realizing that there's a plan behind it. We know all this about the TSE scandal because of one guy called Purdy. He was a farmer in Great Britain that had a biological run from it. And he refused mandatory vaccination for his animals. And none of his cattle had TSE. Not a single one. Just because he refused the vaccination. And this was at the moment when he woke up. And 10 months later, he died of brain cancer. Just to refer to the list of microwave weapons and their application. Okay, in the NASA presentation, we had the nanotags that are apparently there to track down people, to find out where they are and what they think. The first public, nice, detailed public description was in the book of Cara St. Louis Farrelly, The Sun Thief, where she says that there are hollow fibers sprayed, self-replicating hollow fibers that are there to kind of read out the light fingerprint of your DNA, transform it into an electromagnetic radio signal that is detectable via satellite and ground stations. This is what she found out by analyzing information dealt with the chemtrail communities in the United States.
Feed us lies and fear on their controlled media platforms. They program us with fear before we are born. In every area of our existence we are under stress. Stress creates sickness and death. We must break the system. Knowledge defeats fear. Fear less. Let us look at this for just a moment longer so you can see a bit better. When your body has something toxic in it, it tries to keep it away from you as much as it can. The poisons in the GMO foods are stored as fat, since it cannot benefit the system. Just as you produce mucus when you have a sickness, your body is trying to keep it away because it is bad. When you detox or lose weight, at first you feel sick and tired. That is because you are releasing the toxins you have stored into your system. People say to drink lots of water because you need to flush your system and keep it clean. Chemtrails is just another war front on our body and mind. Hard calcium builds up in the brain and other areas of the body. This prohibits brain growth, memory and all sorts of issues. Just as vaccines melting to form parts of the brain, causing major damage. There is a very informative documentary on vaccines out now called Vaxxed. The link is in the description below, as well as a link to a video about GMO and the food situation. We will not go into there further here because of time. There is a cure. We will discuss this later. When you are clean, you will realize your tension and fear and panic and stress will be released. You will be able to think clearly and remember things. When your frequencies are normal, you will not be depressed and anxious, and many health and mental issues vanish completely. When we are able to be free, eat real food, drink fresh water, breathe fresh air. When we are free. Now we have talked about private rituals. How about the rituals they perform for us to see? The elite use what we call a hoax or a false flag event to social engineer and carry out the rituals in plain sight. They have done this social engineering all through history. People do die. The people who appear on the news and in front of a camera are paid by the CIA and other three-letter groups with no government ties, all under control of the Vatican. These paid actors are contracted into silence, paid handsomely for their poor services, typically through a fund which you, the public, donate to like idiots, never looking further. Some actors are used multiple times, as we have seen in the Boston and Paris bombings and various shooting events, or posing as doctors when there is the need for an epidemic scare. The people killed are blood sacrifices, and the events themselves are carefully scripted rituals. The world is a stage. They mock our stupidity in their brazen displays. They plastered their hexagram onto the Judeans as a symbol of sacrifice to Lucifer. The World War II Holocaust, like all others, was planned and set up by them generations in advance, each generation passing on the teachings to the next and carrying out the plan. Mass murder is a Luciferian, Jesuit human sacrifice ritual. They slaughtered hundreds with the swine flu, cancer and AIDS experiments, not to mention the countless others. The Catholic Jesuits, nuns, monks, priests then parade around the countries the elite impoverish, traffic children for their sex and blood rituals, and plant diseases that kill millions through vaccines produced by the Red Cross. They rape and pillage, as they have always done. Then those who do the best work in their depopulation agenda and cult are made into saints and prayed by the blind. Murder makes money. Wars pay. Over 38 million people died in World War I. The Rockefellers alone made about $5.27 per death. The Tuskegee experiment began after that, another successful population control program. You think Zika, Ebola, the bubonic plague are any different? Nothing is new. They have been creating diseases and infecting us to kill us off for thousands of years. Biowarfare. Genocide.
Anton Chaitkin, I'm a historian and the history editor for Executive Intelligence Review. President Obama has put in place a reform apparatus reviving the euthanasia of Hitler Germany in 1939 that began the genocide there. The apparatus here is to deny medical care to elderly, chronically ill and poor people, and thus save, as the president says, $2 to $3 trillion by taking lives considered not worthy to be lived, as the Nazi doctors said. Dr. Ezekiel Emanuel and other avowed cost cutters on this panel also lead a propaganda movement for euthanasia headquartered at the Hastings Center, of which Dr. Emanuel is a fellow. They shape public opinion and the medical profession to accept a death culture such as the Washington state law passed in November to let physicians help kill patients whose medical care is now rapidly being withdrawn in the universal health disaster. Dr. Emanuel's movement for bioethics and euthanasia and this council's purpose directly continue the eugenics movement that organized Hitler's killing of patients and then other costly and supposedly unworthy people. Dr. Emanuel wrote last October 12th that a crisis, war, and financial collapse would get the frightened public to accept the program.
Hey everybody, I'm Christopher Green. You're tuning into AMTV Alternative Media Television. So I can't help but think that this entire Ebola scare is some kind of covert operation, of which the President of the United States, Barack Obama, is using it as an opportunity, the guise of humanitarian crisis, to set up AFRICOM, which was announced by the State Department to send immediately 3,000 U.S. armed, ready, body-able troops to West Africa. Just conveniently, at the same time, we're supposedly fighting this war against ISIS in the Middle East and parts of North Africa, where we recently saw an anti-congressional illegal invasion by the Obama administration in Libya with the ouster of Muammar Gaddafi. So what do we know about Ebola? Well, first off, we know that the CDC in the beginning lied to us, said that it wasn't a risk, that they would contain the crisis. This was all coming from WHO, the World Health Organization. We know that approximately 5,000 people or so have been infected, and half of those infections have resulted in fatalities. Some odd 2,500, 2,600 people roughly now dead as a result of being infected by the disease. Now the CDC estimates that upwards to 500,000 people, yeah, that's right, they've gone from just a few thousand cases to estimating that in a worst case scenario, there could be up to 500,000 people infected by the disease.
On August 27, 2014, the Common Sense Show exposed the megacities concept in revealing something called the America 2050 plan. The enslavement of America had taken center stage and had indeed been called America 2050. The plan for the America 2050 was to herd Americans into 11 megacities consisting of 6 million people each, totaling 66 million people. Under this plan, there are no provisions for any other population developments, according to the Common Sense show. That plan has been updated to happen by 2025. So we have 316 million Americans will change to 66 million megacity dwellers, which equals 250 million missing Americans.
Hey Truth Seekers, welcome back. Zach here. It's August 1st, 2016. The big headlines this evening: the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, for the first time in the history of the United States of America, has declared an area unsafe because of infectious disease. They're saying all pregnant women should stay out of a community in the north end of Miami where Zika is breaking out and a lot of people are catching this infection from the mosquitoes. If you're new to my channel, I've been exposing, since Zika was first announced at the beginning of this year, how the Zika propaganda and fear-mongering is contrived by the numbers. If you're new here, I am proving day by day how our news is created by the laws of numerology. And the reason that is so is because there's something called Kabbalah, which is Jewish mysticism. And our media, our government, it is controlled by Zionists who are mostly Jewish, and a lot of them in the high places, such as those who run the media, they practice this law of, or this religion of Kabbalah and these laws of numerology. And day by day, if you understand this language of numerology, gematria, the practice of coding numbers into words, you can quickly see what is going on. So let's just do this. Let's break it down together. Here's the headline. So often these headlines are coded with very important numbers to Kabbalah, to Zionism, to Freemasonry. Show you this. This is gematria, the practice of coding numbers into words. The language that's most commonly coded in, or the cipher, is on this calculator called English reduction. It's also known as Pythagorean gematria. This headline sums to 119, and this is a very special number to the Zionists. Their symbol is the Star of David, previously known as the Seal of Solomon, gematria of 119. That's the 2 3-sided figure on Israel's flag, something encoded in our money in the stars in the corner of the bill. Also, this very infamous symbol from our money, the all-seeing eye, which is also on it, along with the Star of David, has gematria of 119. You think about the most deadly attack in the history of the nation, September 11th, written 11/9 in most parts of the world. There were men over from Israel recording the attack who said they were sent over by their government to record, to document. That was a story on 60 Minutes shortly after the attack. Somehow the American people never made an outrage about that. Israel, our ally, who we send billions of dollars to each year. If you learn about Zionism, which is what the nation of Israel is and how it came to be, the Zionist movement, there's something in the end of the 19th century called the Protocols of Zion that were written, the 1880s, and they're about how these Zionists will take over the world, intimidating people, dividing them, scaring them needlessly. That's what we're living out here. That's what these headlines are today. CDC's historic Zika warning. So we'll watch the mainstream coverage, we'll listen to what they have to say, but I want to take this a step further with the gematria decoding. Again, here's that headline. CDC's historic Zika warning, gematria of 119, all-seeing eye 119, Star of David 119. Before there was the TV, before there were radios, the way this movement was keeping humanity under control and under fear was with spiritual texts, such as the King James Bible, gematria of 119. The powers that be have always used the things that create fear and a mechanism for control over the masses. Over time, that technology is involved, from the printing press and the Bible, to papers, to radio, to television. So notice Star of David has the gematria of 119. The small way Star of David is also 47. And Zika was supposedly discovered in the year 1947. Notice, Zika 47, Star of David 47, the symbol of the Zionist nation, recognized by a 33-member vote on November 29th, the 333rd day of the year, and the end of the year 47. The Zionist state recognized in 47, Authority 47. What are the odds of the virus being discovered in the same year as the name, you know? And if you know about the history of mosquitoes and disease, you probably know about Walter Reed, the hospital where they research infectious disease. They experiment with mosquitoes and infectious disease, and for whatever reason our taxpayer dollars fund this. What they're really doing at these hospitals is they are creating these illnesses that they can scare us with and that they can probably also manage. I imagine that's how they do it. You know, they make sure that the disease isn't too lethal, and then they also come up with the, you know, the vaccine or the serum for the cure. It's all about fear, money, profit, banking. These Zionists, these Masons, they control the central banking system that so much of the world is on, that our nation's on. That's what it all comes back to. Follow the money. We live in a nation with central banks which need constantly new debt creation. How do they create this debt? With war, with fear. You know, fear sells. That's what the Zika virus is all about. This is how these Zionist banker tyrants have figured out how to take over the world. You know, it's not all bad either. They figured out how to advance technology. They've created all this gadgetry that's, you know, it's mesmerized us. I noticed the subheadline down here, Agency warns some travelers away from Florida community. That subheadline has gematria of 224. We're in the 224th year of the French Republican calendar. What that is the American Revolution after it ended. You know, we started our independence 1776. This year on July 4th, we turned 240 years old. The French Republican calendar is their same count from the end of the French Revolution, which came right after the American Revolution. The Bavarian Illuminati is credited with the French Revolution. They were established May 1st, 1776, just before the American Revolution. You think about all the American leaders that were over in France, red, white, and blue, one revolution after the next. These nations have always been attached to the hip. All these nations serve the same agenda, often called the New World Order, the Illuminati. This is what it is. It's the gang of Masons, Zionists, high places, the Catholic Church. This is it right here. Revelation is a book of prophecy. As it happens, Prince, the musician, was at this game. The day he died, ESPN did a story on how Prince was a big fan of the Golden State Warriors the last few years, and this is the one NBA game he went to this year, on March 3rd, where the Warriors won 121-106. Real quick, I want to listen to this interview from Prince from years ago with Tavis Smiley. I want you to hear Prince say the word prophecy. Let's listen here for a moment.
Just tell me the whole story. I'll fill in the blanks, but don't tell me something that you think I'm supposed to.
We're indigent servants and we got a black president now.
Well, I don't vote, and I have nothing to do with it. I got no dog in that race.
And those who cuss me out and slap me personally if I didn't ask you why.
The reason why is because I'm one of Jehovah's Witnesses, and we never voted. And that's not to say that I don't think Barack Obama, President Obama, is a very smart individual, and he seems like prophecy is what we all have to go by now.
Prophecy is what we all have to go by now. And I'm sure many of you have heard, the details have come out about how Prince, years before September 11th, was in Europe doing a concert, and he started singing that Osama bin Laden's getting ready to drop the bomb. You know, turned it into a nice rhythmic song. Anyhow, what I am trying to wake people up to is that this world we live in, it is planned. From news stories to history to even the sports games. And the same people are doing all of the planning, and they're using the same numerological code for all of it. It is the Freemasons, and they are using the Book of Revelation as the playbook. Again, I have shown how all the sports leagues are scripted through these same numbers, often coming back to Revelation and prophecy. Right now I'm writing a book. The book is going to be the best thing I've done by far to date. It shows how clear this history is from the beginning up to the present. And it's the same numbers coded again and again. The only reason I'm able to make videos identifying this is because I've been studying these patterns, and my original studies didn't start with sports. I was just sticking to history and news events. I realized it became undeniable that what was going on in the world of sports was directly connected, which makes a lot of sense if you're awake. The example of September 11th, think about how after September 11th, Tom Brady and the Patriots emerged out of nowhere. You know, after September 11th, the Congress signed the Patriot Act. The next thing you knew, the New England Patriots were the greatest football team ever. All staged, all planned, all part of a big show. So sticking with this theme, I want to show you what was so interesting about the date of March 3rd in light of the date of Prince's death. The small way, warriors in Revelation equal 49. The big way, warriors in Revelation both sum to 121 like the winning score. From March 3rd until the date Prince died was a span of 49 days. He died 49 days later, this number of Revelation, this book of prophecy. We just heard Prince say how we have to go by prophecy, by spiritual texts. I am not a Christian. I'm just a researcher. I'm someone searching for truth. I've come to understand these patterns by researching them and looking for answers and eventually finding them. You know, I've been doing this work on the internet since 2013, but really the research started long before then. It just took me until 2013, more of a decade of researching, to finally start to really put it together. And now with each passing day, I put it together more and more. This measuring dates by the calendars, it's all part of this coding system. Gematria, the practice of coding numbers into words, syncing words up with dates. It's all part of this ancient language. And our calendar, it's called the Gregorian calendar. Look at this. Calendar equals 58, Gregorian equals 58, Freemasonry equals 58. It's the Freemasons responsible for all of this. Prince died 47 days before what would have been his 58th birthday. 47, a special number, a number connecting to time. The first NBA championship won in 47 by the Philadelphia Warriors. Where Prince died at Chanhassen, it's on the 44th parallel north and the 93rd meridian west. The reason these numbers are so interesting is because they're connected to time and prophecy. Saturn is the keeper of time. Saturn has gematria of 93. As it happens, oracle of...
Do you have any people being paid by the CIA who are contributing to a major circulation American journal?
We do have people who submit pieces to American journals.
Do you have any people paid by the CIA who are working for television networks?
This, I think, gets into the kind of getting into the details, Mr. Chairman, that I'd like to get into in
It is possible to provide a real-world example for another limited hangout operation that has prepared similar attacks by looking to none other than WikiLeaks. As an organisation, they have never destroyed the career of a British, American or Israeli politician, but instead a laundry list of people that bears a striking resemblance to the CIA enemies list.
Black Ops secrecy restored, that allowed not only for the Ukrainian revolution in Russia's backyard, it permitted the secrecy necessary for the downing of Flight MH17, Flight 9268, the Paris attacks, and even the downing of the Russian fighter jet by the Turks. Now you're probably saying to yourself, bullshit, but just remember, ISIS is our proxy army funded by our tax dollars put in place by us to topple Syria. Therefore, every international event tied to ISIS inevitably leads back to us. And so these events, Euromaidan, MH17, Flight 9268, Charlie Hebdo, the Paris attacks, the recent Turkey incident, they were all put in place to escalate Obama bin Laden's prefab Cold War 2.0 New World Order agenda. Pretty deep, huh? Now, to further the assertion that the Snowden psyop was entirely staged, you just have to look at the leaks themselves. The Snowden leaks didn't tell us anything we didn't already know. Mass surveillance was made legal with the Patriot Act. Everybody knew that. The leaks were just a cover story to tell us what we already knew. They just made a big deal about it so that their story would be even more convincing. Now, if you listen to the Snowden interviews themselves, they lean towards the atheist left. It's subtle, but it's there, which means his politics leans toward the dark side. Not only that, but the journalists he chose to leak the documents to are members of the gay mafia, which is a leftist extremist group. So, if Snowden's politics are to the left, and the Intercept's politics are to the left, and the current administration's politics are to the left, well, that makes the whole thing a leftist conspiracy. Of course, libtards won't agree with that. They'll leave me dirty comments, as will atheists, because they all have the same vested interest, the liberal agenda. The Snowden leaks, aka Citizen PSYOP, were brought to us by the National Association of Baby Killers in association with Cocksuckers United, sponsored by the Council on Keeping the Borders Wide Open to Implode Society, aka the Democratic Stasi Party.
Perhaps the most vital directive in White House's plan was to obtain absolute control of the press, at that time the only mass communications media, to distribute information to the public, so that all news and information could be slanted, so that the masses could be convinced that a one-world government is the only solution to our many and varied problems. Now do you know who owns and controls our mass communications media? I'll tell you, practically all the movie lots in Hollywood is owned by the Leymans, Kuhn Loeb and Company, Goldman Sachs, and other internationalist bankers. All the national radio and TV channels in the nation are owned and controlled by those same internationalist bankers. The same is true of every chain of metropolitan newspapers and magazines.
Information. Disinformation. The elite bought the printing presses as soon as they were invented, just like all inventions. When the TV was put out for the public, it was no different. If they are not given easy access by the inventor, then he is simply silenced, or murdered, and they take that. When one cannot be blackmailed or threatened or paid into silence, the elite have no reason to keep them around. Death does not affect them because your life does not matter to them. They care nothing for you. They own the media. Every person who you see regularly on TV is in their control. They control it. If you are not in their agenda, you do not get seen or heard. Censorship is nothing new. It starts at the beginning of everything they do. They cannot abide freedom. They must create death camps called countries, dividing us in an endless amount of ways. They must create populations that are uneducated, unhealthy and unmotivated. They are masters of deception, made easy by their control of all media, education, wealth, religions and governments. Because they worship death, it is all they can see and they are blinded by it. They have no freedom because they swear oaths and pledges, which makes freedom impossible. They control our minds through distraction and deception. Should not be hard to understand how this is done. Subliminal messages have been exposed time and time again in our movies and games and commercials. It doesn't stop there. We are kept locked in a world of fantasy, dreaming of the stars, a false reality. Hollywood, Disney, TV programming has been working on us for generations now, controlling our perceptions. All of what you see on television programming or from any mainstream media source is scripted. They are all actors. The politicians, the news, all given a script. They play the game using the numbers and symbols. Sports are scripted. Awards and competitions and talent shows are all scripted. The Olympic Games. The ritual celebration for who the elite called Apollo and Zeus in Rome when the first games started to slaughter the Christ believers of the day. We still celebrate that ritual to Lucifer worldwide. Scripted. Movies are scripted. News is scripted. It is all a show. It is all set up to keep you wrapped into a reality that has no meaning or existence. It is a psychological operation. Just like the wars and the violence. They create distractions, movements, protests. They fund them. They create them. They control them. If they do not start out that way and become successful, they are soon infiltrated and taken over. Black Lives Matter. Like the Black Panthers and Ku Klux Klan. It is all exactly the same. Same agenda. Same funding. Same controllers. They always play both sides. They pin us all against each other in hopes we will die faster and not see it is they who are the problem. Black Lives Matter was created by George Soros to start a race war in America just as in the 1800s. Now we will see the pipeline protests in America will turn into the descendants of American Indians in a race war against the descendants of immigrants. However, the Native American descendants never seem to do enough research into their truth either, as the tribe they originate from was interbred with the elite tribe long before they separated and stayed in America when the tribes were sailing, trading gold and opium. Those who did not separate in America to later be called Indians continued with the remaining and elite tribes and collected in Egypt. Regardless, no one is exempt from the lies. The elite will continue creating division and events until they can openly claim martial law without notice. There is no such thing as racism. We are all one race. We are all the human race. That is all you get. Sorry, you are not special because you were born. No one is. So we see, in the elite bloodlines today, there are the Arabian, Turkish, German, and Asian families involved. That is because it is not about race. We are all one race. What matters to the top elite within the elite bloodline is the purity of their blood. To them, the purity of the blood increases the satanic power they possess. Not their skin color or country or any of it matters. Those separations were created to keep us separated and keep us divided. We are all attacked equally by the elite. They want us all dead. Do you not see how they laugh at us as we fall for their tricks every time? To throw a bomb into a building, paste the picture of a plane to it and tell you what happened. They watch us run around like cockroaches. Families broken, lives destroyed. They laugh, because they have told us before about what they will do to us. Still we let them do it and react in the exact same way every fucking time. Yes, they laugh. They troll the masses and the masses feed the troll. It would be pitiful if we all were not so utterly guilty. It all seems so obvious. But as we look around it seems still no one gets the picture. We are saturated in distraction, division and deception. We are kept working as slaves all day and more foremost. Then we plug ourselves into brainwashing willingly. To ease the stress of our enslavement, we dress our bondage with brainwashing ourselves even further. Play some more games. Take more selfies so you can get likes on Facebook and fill the meaningless hole your lives have become. Contributing and living in the fake reality you do is never going to make you happy or content in life. Life is more, which means we must be more. People have an emptiness because we are meant to have true freedom in life and happiness and love. We are supposed to have peace and caring. We are supposed to be more than we are. Everyone around the world wonders why they are not happy, and like idiots, go chasing after every little crumb of sugar the elite throw at them. We are addicted to their life they have forced us into. We must break the addiction. Education is a major part of the mind control experiment run on humans. It all started around 940 AD. Herbert Bourlac, who is known by his Jesuit name Pope Sylvester II, an alchemist son of a shepherd, which alone should explain everything, became the head of the Catholic school in Reims. He had, quote, no background, but eventually was given a false background by the church, who named a monastery after him. A common practice to this day. False background for false actors for a false existence. He reintroduced what we now call liberal arts, social studies, or public education, and it has been our education system ever since. Herbert was descended from Theodoric IV, carrying the Elitius bloodline. That is how this works. That is the only way this works. Today we see the implementation of Common Core, another fancy term for Elitius education new edition. We will not discuss this further as it is easy to find the truth on. It is important to keep in mind, the teachers we see in schools, just like the doctors we go to, have been brainwashed, just like you, their entire lives. The educations they have received were controlled from the start. They, like us, have only been given lives to feed us with. It is our duty to wake up everyone we can, to show our doctors and our teachers and our lawyers and our pastors the true deception and control. We who are awake have a duty to wake up those who are not. Like a ripple effect, the truth will expand across the world. But you must throw the first seed of truth into the masses. All that needs to be done is for the truth to be heard. That is all. Do not be discouraged. We know this information is very intensive, and for those who are just waking up or not awake, it can be very overwhelming at first. Only knowledge will cure this. In their pride, they fuck up. They are not perfect. Although they are well planned and dedicated, they did not expect the internet would take off as it did and allow for so much information to be shared so widely. It was all consumed by the public faster than any of their previous experiments. They were able to keep most distracted with their created and controlled games and social media platforms and movies. However, they did now expect Anonymous. They did not expect us. The internet is our domain. We are the watchers. We have learned the system of the beast, the New World Order control system, the Matrix. That is why they are trying to take it back. Now people are realizing the censorship on Twitter, Facebook and YouTube. The internet is censored in every country, just as every piece of technology you are allowed to purchase has been created by the elite, fully equipped with whatever they need to censor and track you, to control you. Same with the tools they provide. Search engines controlled by them. Google, Wikipedia, controlled by them. Same with the internet now. They want control of everything you see, hear, say, think and do. On October 1st, Obama is handing over the internet to private, global entities. The final nail in freedom's coffin. Information, knowledge, truth. These are our tools, and without them the human species will die. In the past, countries and tribes through centuries have pushed the elite out of power, eradicated their evil from society and banished them from their lands. The elite learned they must control information. They must control knowledge so we never find the truth. They have been waging cyber war for a while now with ever-increasing intensity. They infiltrate real truth movements and whistleblowers and anonymous groups. They hide under these labels only to honeypot those who fight for truth and freedom. The government especially targets Anonymous since it is the most well-known internet label for truth warriors. We are known to fight against governments and expose their corruption. We fight for humanity. Anonymous is just that. The idea of humanity. That is why there is no leader. There is no organization. There is no membership or SEC. That is why Anonymous says that Anonymous is everyone. The idea of humanity and what it can be lives in each of us. If we allow it to be seen and heard, those who do and those who act on it are anonymous. So the agents of deception are brought in and growing steadily now online, infiltrating and creating disinfo and division. And as always, we have exposed them. The interwebs are anonymous domain. Their deception worked for a long time, but their time is up. Anarchy is rising. It is time for humanity to be free, like every other species on Earth. We must be free. Many wonder why no one has come forward before. Well, simply put, you must not be looking. Over time you can follow the blood-soaked path of whistleblowers pouring through history. We blow the whistle on corruption and evil, and they murder us one by one. Because humanity does not stand with us. When Obama passed the bill making it legal to assassinate American citizens and non-American citizens without trial, in any country, with a drone, no one batted an eye. Now we are fish in a barrel. Over the last year alone, over 100 top medical researchers have been murdered to keep them silent. Dozens of judges have been killed. You will not find out about it on the main news. The elite know that the whistleblowers' fellow heretics will hear about the deaths, and it is for them the messages are sent, not the public. February 2nd, 2013. Philip Marshall and his 2 children and his Shih Tzu, Suki, were all shot to death in their California home. None of Marshall's family who flew out there were allowed to attend the funeral. The public was told he went suddenly crazy and killed everyone and himself. He was murdered for writing books exposing the workings of the CIA. Michael Hastings exposed General Stanley McChrystal, top commander of United States forces in Afghanistan, and was working on a story about the CIA. He contacted WikiLeaks with his concerns of FBI, and a few hours later he was dead. Mr. Hastings was believed to have been alone in the car, which struck a tree at high speed, according to the Los Angeles County Coroner's Office, stated New York Times. Jim Stone noted, "There is no impact damage to this car. The only damage there is blown out in the back, not smashed in the front, and it obviously missed the tree as it rolled to a stop." WikiLeaks is a known honeypot used by the elite, just like The Guardian, Courage Foundation and many others. Remember, they play both sides. They are masters of deception. Pawns of the elite are easily spotted. For those who watch, they are taken care of by the elite. That is why they are still alive and on TV frequently. They have a product to sell. They are used by the elite to bait innocent people. One would like to think that Assange and Snowden were good people at one time, that they were once freedom fighters and truth speakers. We can only hope that they will be one day, as all proof shows they are an infection of the elite. They are both supported and protected by the Rothschild family, and they will be until they are no longer needed, until they are not a media hit anymore. No longer stars, just like actors and musicians and others. They are expendable. They are only there to give the media a story to distract you with. You are not free. We can only hope they will turn on the elite, like the rest who have tried to come forward before or who have spoken out in the past. If we unite, perhaps it will give those hiding the courage to stand with us and free themselves as well. First they discredit, then they silence. Ted Gunderson, chief of FBI and special agent, was murdered after exposing chemtrails. Truman Capote was murdered by gun as well as gagged, tied, and beaten for the words he wrote on paper and passed to the world. Not only is free speech long gone, but the freedom for the reader to choose what to read is gone as well. Many who speak out against the elite Jesuits are killed by having their throats crushed. There is always important symbolism in the deaths of the whistleblowers who anger the wrong people. It is very personal to the elite. They have a difficult time controlling all of the rage and evil inside them. We are not heroes. We are not idols. The truth, not us, is what is important. That is why identity does not matter when it comes to truth. Anonymous knows this. If so many die, and those who go into this and decide to stand up, die, why do people do it? Well, There comes a time in your life when you have to decide what will you do with it. Do you want to be a slave, or do you want to be free? There is such a thing as doing something, simply because it is the right thing to do.
I wish none of this had happened.
So do all who live to see such times, but that is not for them to decide. All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given to us. There are other forces at work in this world, Frodo, besides the will of evil.
That is the case with us. People do not want to die, especially to die against their will and in a very horrible way. But the truth sets us free. And once we have been set free and know the truth, there is no hiding it. There is no turning back. No giving up. The truth is bigger than that. Everyone must be allowed to know the truth. It is as simple as that. There is no question or decision to be made. The die is cast. We are the unashamed, unchained. We must do what is right. We must speak truth. Now we have come a long way. But how can we break from this system? It will be hard work. We must all learn how to think. Once we have broken the mind control and indoctrination, we must all relearn every single thing we think we know. We must change ourselves, our thoughts, our actions. We must fight to keep truth safe and free. It is not always comfortable. It is not easy. It is not supposed to be. Life is supposed to be so much more than we are allowed today. We must learn how to read between the lies. Today we work all day to make what someone else tells us our time and work is worth. We get the paper and medals they allow us to have. Then we are told by someone else how much we owe them. We are dictated what food we are allowed to eat based on the paper and medal someone else decided we earned. We are slaves. And too many are too blind to realize. We pay taxes from the money we are told we are allowed to have. Our tithe to the beloved government who does so much for us. They take that money and give you back more laws and regulations, more rules, more restrictions, more chances for you to screw up so they can take more of your money, or better yet lock you in a cage. Like animals, you gladly send your children to foreign countries you cannot locate on a map because your masters tell you to. You are happy to send and be sent off to kill strangers you have a lack of care to learn about. You are happy to serve the master of money and war and slaughter innocent children, women and men, happy to devastate families. You don't know them. Why care? It ain't your family. They could not possibly be like you. They don't think, or dream or laugh, like you do. If you believe that your country is the only country in the world with the ability to have functioning life in it, you are the problem. Every person who puts on a uniform and a gun is an enemy of all who do not be fooled any longer. All who do so take an oath, yet many celebrate them as heroes. Patriots. Americans especially have a serious hard-on for their patriotic heroes, just like the Nazis. The rest of the world calls them bloodthirsty murdering savages, which is a bit more accurate. We hope this next clip will help you understand how we can live in peace, without a government or ruling class controlling us. We will also leave links in the description to other videos that can teach you the changes you must make to free yourself from your captivity. Everyone wants change, but the change must start with you. Knowledge erases fear. Fear nothing. So firstly, how does society work without this control we are so used to now? The human species, like all other species, if allowed to be human, uncorrupted by control, will thrive in peace and prosperity. Just as every other species lives naturally, so will we. No government, no rulers, no brainwashing, no control. We would have to act like humans. We would have to take responsibility for our actions and the actions of those around us. We would have to learn what it means to be responsible and accountable.
we couldn't have police, or nobody would care for the poor, or we wouldn't be protected, whether it's from local thugs or from foreign invaders. We wouldn't have this, we wouldn't have that. So thank goodness we have government and taxes, because we wouldn't have any of those things. And the first way I'd respond to that is by pointing out the assumptions that underlie that complaint, that argument. Basically what people are saying, because let's be clear about what the terms mean, government is the people who boss everybody else around. And taxes are those people demanding money from us. So they basically tell us, hand over a whole bunch of money and we'll decide how to take care of you. We'll decide how to spend your money. If we don't like it, too bad, we don't really have a choice. Like, well, you can vote in a few years and maybe something will change, even though it totally won't. So that's what people are saying. Basically, if we didn't have a ruling class stealing our money and then supposedly spending it to protect us, how could we possibly have roads or anybody to protect us? The implication is that in this country, for example, 300 million people would just sit around thinking, oh, we can't do it. Without politicians and tax collectors, we can't have a road, we can't protect each other, and we can't... And it rests on this bizarre assumption that things that almost everybody wants, they wouldn't do anything to make happen unless there were politicians forcing us to give them money so they can make it happen. And so an example I like to use is, let's apply the same argument to food, because food is pretty darn important. I think everybody can agree. Let's apply the same argument that statists use about the roads or caring for the poor or protection or anything like that. The argument would go like this. Now, in the context of food, listen how idiotic this is. If we don't have government demanding money from all of us under the threat of caging us, and that's what taxation is, here's the money you have to give us, here's the nasty things we do to you if you don't. If that didn't happen so that they could build a big food production and distribution system and feed us, well, we'd all starve. We'd all just sit around saying, gosh, I wish we had food, but no politicians and tax collectors. We're just going to sit around and starve to death. Now, in this country, nobody would believe something that stupid, because all you have to do is go to a supermarket and see a perfect example of really efficient, organized cooperation that nobody is forced to do. There is no, if you're going to make the argument that people make about roads and protection and all that, you'd say, well, nobody is forced to make any food for anybody in this country. How do you know everyone's just going to say, well, it's not my job? Then we'll all starve to death. There's no guarantee. There's no master plan guaranteeing that we'll all have food. So obviously we're all going to starve if we don't have an authoritarian government stealing our money and then making food and giving it to us. Because golly gee, we couldn't possibly do it voluntarily ourselves.
Many people, when they hear the word anarchy, think of chaos and mayhem. So they assume that an anarchist must be in favor of disorder and violence. That is the complete opposite of the truth. Most objections and complaints about the anarchist or voluntarist philosophy are not actually about the philosophy itself, but result from people misunderstanding what the philosophy is all about. To illustrate a few points, we will use the example of two fictional islands. Authoritania, where there is a ruling class or government, and anarchia, where there is no ruling class of any kind. We will use these islands to examine several common misconceptions about anarchism. Lots of people think anarchy means every man for himself, or survival of the fittest, or the absence of any social cooperation or organization. They think that anarchy means everyone has to be self-sufficient. This comes from the false assumption that some kind of government is necessary for any organization to occur. Whether it's part of a republic, a democracy, a kingdom, or a dictatorship, a ruling class issues orders called laws and punishes anyone who disobeys them. That is not cooperation. That's domination. It's one group forcing its will on another. Authoritarianism can be used to force people into organized patterns, but that does not mean that people are incapable of organizing their activities without being forced. The most productive and useful examples of organization that we see today are anarchistic in nature. No one was forced to build the grocery store you go to. No one was forced to produce or sell anything in it. Everyone involved in the vastly complex operation of growing your food, transporting it, displaying it in the store, and selling it to you, everyone involved participates voluntarily, working in exchange for money. You and all the other store customers choose freely which store to go to and what to spend your money on. This purely voluntary arrangement allows for an amazingly complex degree of organized cooperation without anyone being coerced to participate. In contrast, under government, a very small group of people comes up with an idea and forces everyone else to participate in it and provide for its funding with tax dollars. In the authoritarian version of a supermarket, the ruling class would tell people what to produce and how much, what prices to charge, and they would tell customers what they must buy and what they must pay. Anyone who did not comply with the centralized master plan would be punished in some way. That is how government does things. Which one of these would you prefer? Another common but incorrect assumption is that if there were no ruling class or no government, people would have no way of defending themselves against common criminals or foreign invaders. Again, this is simply not true. The government version of protection is inherently hypocritical. Governments will use their hired law enforcers to find and lock up some of the private thugs and thieves and prevent them from preying on people. But every ruling class gets the money for its operations by way of taxation, demanding money from its subjects and punishing those who don't pay up. Oddly, every ruling class insists that it needs to be able to forcibly control and extort money from people in this way in order to protect them from private criminals who might try to forcibly control and extort them. In contrast, if there is no government, people do not lose their inherent right to defend themselves from violence or to defend what they have from those who would take it. Every person has this right, and they also have the right to organize and cooperate with each other to exercise that right. Organizing for mutual defense does not require any government-granted laws or authority. No one wants to be attacked or defrauded, and everyone wants to feel safe. Whether each person takes this on himself or herself individually, or whether they hire and organize others to do it on their behalf, it can be done on a voluntary basis. Those who insist that government is necessary often claim that if there wasn't a government, then smaller private gangs would spring up to enslave and rob people. Organized crime gangs exist along with government, and most people do not understand the dynamics between them and how government enriches and empowers organized crime while appearing to fight it. Black markets enrich organized crime, and money allows them to buy government protection. There's no reason to think they would do as well in an environment of freedom, where they would have fewer ways to make money and would be up against both individual and organized armed citizens. A criminal gang that's recognized as such has far less power than a gang whose aggression is perceived to be legitimate and proper. And that's the gang we call government. When thuggery is called law enforcement, and thievery is called taxation, and self-defense is called crime and terrorism, then even the widespread ownership of firearms can't do much to stop the aggression. Imagine a private gang trying to do the things the government does without the aura of authority, and imagine how a well-armed population would respond to this. The gang would fail quickly and dramatically. Another concern that people have when they first consider the idea of a stateless society is that some people are truly malicious, destructive, and sociopathic. The concern is that these people would be free to do anything they wanted and no one would stop them. But this concern is again based on a basic misunderstanding of human nature. Wherever we have a government ruling class, we still have freelance thieves and thugs who are not deterred by the laws of the politicians. In some instances, they're stopped by force by the police, or they decide not to commit a crime for fear of what the police might do to them. What makes this deterrence work is not the legislation or the official badges, but the simple threat of harm to the sociopath. It really makes no difference whether the threat comes from the police, or another citizen, or even another criminal. A sociopath doesn't care about laws or social rules. He cares about avoiding pain and hardship for himself. This is still true when a government ruling class is not involved at all. If the intended target of a would-be carjacker pulls out a gun, it doesn't make any difference to the carjacker whether that person has a badge or whether there's a law against taking people's cars. Discouraging nasty people from hurting others does not require special authority, only the ability to use defensive force. Ironically, though people hope that government will protect them, having a government, a gang which is believed to have the right to tax and control people, just creates one gang so big and powerful that normal people can't resist it. In short, to create a huge gang and then give it societal permission to control and extort people with the hope that this gang will prevent theft and thuggery is simply a self-contradictory idea, but that's what government always is. Some people might assume that if people organize for mutual protection and defense, then that's what government is. But there's an essential difference. People coming together to do something that everyone has the right to do, such as defend yourself, doesn't require any special authority. It's not government unless one group of people claims the right to do things which others do not have the right to do, such as taxing and controlling innocent people. Organized defense can be very effective without supposing the special right to rule over others. In other words, without being government. In contrast, governments rob the people they rule of far more wealth than private crooks could ever manage, making the idea of a protector government ridiculous. Another common objection to the idea of a stateless society is the notion that if not for a group of lawmakers telling the rest of us how to behave, we would all behave like stupid, irresponsible, violent animals. This claim implies one of two things. Either we normal people have no idea what is right and wrong unless and until politicians tell us, or the only reason we want to do the right thing and coexist peacefully is because politicians told us to. A quick examination of your own motivations will show you that neither of those things is actually true. It's particularly odd to make this argument in a society where politicians are voted into power. If the people themselves have no moral code and no conscience, and are just stupid, violent animals, why does almost everyone want government to keep the peace and protect the innocent? Would a population of vicious, heartless, evil people try to elect good people to keep the evil people in line? Obviously not. The goodness and the desire for order and peace comes from us, not from the lawmakers we vote into office. The same holds true of everything that government does. If people are so short-sighted and selfish that they can't be trusted to voluntarily organize and raise money for whatever they deem important, then how can those same people be trusted to decide who should be in power? The implication is that the average person can't be trusted to run his own life, but can be trusted to choose someone to run other people's lives. Government is really not a civilizing influence. It's actually an uncivilizing influence. People who would never personally rob their neighbors constantly use the government to do it for them by way of taxation. People who would never dream of trying to control minute details of their neighbors' lives think it's just fine to vote for politicians to do it instead. Government gives everyone the opportunity and encouragement to rob and control other people without risk. So government, rather than serving as a check against the imperfections of our nature, instead drastically amplifies our greed, irresponsibility, and malice towards other human beings by giving us a legally acceptable and risk-free way to interfere with the lives and choices of our fellow men and women. Government brings out the criminal and busybody in everyone. In contrast, in the absence of a ruling class, people would lose their ability to ask lawmakers to interfere with their neighbors' lives. And we would not have law enforcers who could avoid responsibility for evil deeds by claiming that they were just following orders. Throughout history, far more theft, assault, oppression, and even murder has been committed by those acting on behalf of a supposed authority than by anybody else. Even basically good people, when they believe in government, will condone things or do things which they know would be wrong if they did them on their own. Most people know that theft and assault are bad, but they imagine that controlling their neighbors and forcing them to spend their money on things they don't want is perfectly moral and legitimate when it's done by way of the political process. Wrong becomes right when it's called taxation, legislation, regulation, and war. Anarchists know better. They know that human society will never be perfect. But it would be a whole lot better if evil deeds were committed only by genuinely nasty, sociopathic people, rather than being committed wholesale by basically good people who think that violent aggression is okay when it's called law enforcement. The fundamental principle of voluntarism is very simple. It's wrong to initiate violence against any other person, regardless of badges, laws, or alleged authority. The only time the use of force is justified is to defend against aggression. Almost everyone understands this on a personal level, but they've been taught that this basic rule of social living does not apply in the game of politics and government. Most people already know how to get along with others, and most people want a peaceful and just society. Our morality doesn't come from politicians making laws. Our ability to organize and cooperate doesn't come from the ruling class. When people escape the belief in government, they don't suddenly turn into violent animals. Our inherent right to defend ourselves and our ability to defend ourselves is not served by government. In fact, it's threatened by government more than by anything else. Ruling classes do not produce peaceful coexistence, but rather perpetual conflict and violence. Our belief in government authority takes our compassion, virtue, and good intentions and turns them into power for people who crave power and riches. Of course, the people who benefit most from the political racket will put a good spin on the system and do their best to convince people that it's a social necessity. But ask yourself this: have the thousands of laws, regulations, and taxes imposed on you by politicians made you a better person? Have they made you more productive or more caring? Is the world better off with the politicians taking your money and telling you how to live your life? Or do you think it might have been better off if you'd been allowed to spend your own money and make your own decisions? Is society really best served by a small class of people forcefully imposing a centralized master plan on everyone else? Can the orders and threats of a ruling class make the world what it should be? Or would society be better served by human freedom and respect for individual rights, by voluntary cooperation and peaceful organization? If this second option sounds better to you, maybe you should learn more about anarchism.
So, now that we know how society should work, how do we make it happen? We are all under so much mind control and trauma. We all are addicted to something. Food, medications. We have chemtrail poisoning and much more. We must cure ourselves, and with government, society can never cure itself. When we are healthy, happy and clean, our minds can work properly, our bodies can function as they are supposed to. So we need to learn how to do that. How do we get healthy? Dr. Sebi was recently murdered by the government because he has cured cancer, AIDS, schizophrenia, depression, diabetes and many other things. Naturally, he had just gotten a patent on the cures when he was jailed and murdered. The Earth produces everything humanity needs to survive freely and openly. Can you not understand that? We must all wake up now and act. In October 2016, the Jesuits will be electing their new Black Pope. This and many other extremely important events will be taking place by the new year. Many will be devastating, unless the masses wake up and stop them, of course. It will be interesting indeed. We will see what happens. If you rise with us, or if you get left behind. They now rage in war, far and wide, in consequence of our neglect. Our own sins enables them to continue the raids at will, the penalty for our sins being that they have become well known and feared. King Ervana wrote in his journal before he and his kingdom were overrun and destroyed by the elite. At the time called Antes, 1st century BC, there is much more you need to know. However, you have learned quite a lot for one day. Please share this video and see the links in the description. Help wake up everyone you can. Our struggle is not against flesh and blood. Our fight is against rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the forces of evil. Expect us.